Hello everyone and welcome to another Thomas video. So today we're really taking a look at Balustrade Spy Dredge deck in Thomas format. So this is a deck that I saw in my Discord. A viewer of mine called Spellet made a Balustrade Spy Dredge deck, and all I did was change the deck ever so slightly to house a card that I will talk about when I explain the combo in just a bit. So this is a Dredge deck, but obviously we don't have any Dredge cards in Magic Arena. But from Jumpstart 25, we got this card called the Balustrade Spy. As you can see, this is a 4-mana card, and you might be thinking, why would you want to play a 4-mana card in the Timeless format where everything is so incredibly fast? Well, the thing about this card is, if this card does come down, we're going to be targeting ourselves, and if we target ourselves, because we don't have a singular land in the deck, since all the lands we have are going to be MDFC lands, we're going to mill our entire deck, which means we're going to be able to mill 4 copies of Creeping Chill. Now, 4 copies of Creeping Chill already, by itself, is dealing 12 damage. And once the Creeping Chill does get a proc, that means the Silver Moat Ghoul is going to come out from the graveyard onto the battlefield, since we have gained 3 or more life this turn. Which means that is going to proc the Prize Amalgam, since it sees that the Silver Moat Ghoul came out from the graveyard onto the battlefield at the end of the turn. What's really cool about this is the Prize Amalgam actually comes out at the end of opponent's turn, which means even if opponent has a board wipe for this, they're still going to have to face 4 copies of Prize Amalgam, which is 12 damage. But you might be thinking, but wait, you milled your entire deck, so how do you win since you're gonna draw a card and lose the game because you have no cards in the deck? So this is where this card comes in, called Whirlspine Worm. You can either play the Whirlspine Worm or the Progenitus, whichever card that you have in your collection. You just need 1 copy of it, and if it ever enters the graveyard from anywhere, this card basically shuffles it back into the deck. So the moment your turn comes back, you're going to draw into a Whirlspine Worm, which is going to buy you additional turn for you to attack with your army. Chances are opponent's going to be dead because Creeping Chill probably did 9 to 12 damage, plus you're going to have Silver Moat Ghouls and Prize Amalgams attacking on your turn. So here's going to be the card that I added. This is going to be a tech when you draw into a Whirlspine Worm. For example, during the mulliganing stage or just before you combo, you draw into a Whirlspine Worm and you suddenly panic. If I play out the Balustrade Spy, I'm just gonna lose because I don't have a Whirlspine Worm in the deck. Well, luckily, you have this card called Haunted Dead. This is a tech that I put in called the Haunted Dead. You can pay 2 mana, and at an instant speed, you can discard 2 cards, which you can put the Whirlspine Worm back into the deck once it hits the graveyard. So even if you somehow draw into the Whirlspine Worm, you can still win as long as you have either a Dark Ritual or 2 lands already on the battlefield. And lastly, it wouldn't be a timeless deck that is not playing Dark Ritual or Sacrifice, which allows this deck to combo off on turn 1 or turn 2. On turn 1, obviously just playing a double Dark Ritual into Balustrade Spy can do the job, or you can go Evoke the Grief into Sacrifice, and conveniently, Grief happens to be a 4-mana card, which allows you to play the Balustrade Spy immediately on the battlefield on turn 1. So this is going to be an all-in deck, but sometimes you don't want to hard mulligan into Balustrade Spy, because sometimes you have to keep certain hands, otherwise you're just going to be mulliganing until you lose the game. If you see that you have Grief or Ashiok and a copy of Dark Ritual, just keep that hand. If you can somehow scam your opponent with Grief, I would advise you to just keep that hand. Sometimes you can just draw into Balustrade Spy and you already have Sacrifice sitting in your hand. Grief can stall you out until you get to your combo piece, because opponent's not going to be able to do anything when you scam your opponent, taking out their hand. And don't save your Dark Rituals or Sacrifice, just use them on even getting things like Silver Moat Ghouls out or Haunted Dead, and just ride the momentum. Sometimes just hitting them with Grief and Silver Moat Ghouls can just win you the game in few turns. But sometimes just Dark Ritualing into Ashiok can just win you the game because opponent just happens to have only fetch lands. So honestly, I'm actually kind of excited to try this deck out. I do think the deck is probably a bit of a meme, and I don't expect the deck to win a bunch of games, but I decided to play this deck today because I've been asked to try it out. So with that said, I'm gonna be hopping over to some Thomas Special 3 to show you guys how the deck does. So let's hop on over. Alright. This hand looks pretty good. I can go either Ashiok, Mill Myself, or Grief. Okay. What to do? What to do? So many ways of doing this here. So I can scam or using the Malakir's Rebirth or Reanimate. Opponent has a Cling to Dust. Okay, let's take away the Nethergoyf. And we'll probably Dark Ritual into Ashiok. I think this is much stronger. Since they can't use the Flooded Strand. Nice. Look at my sideboard. It's so cute. Like, what is this? Okay, defense grid coming in for sure. Let me just organize so I can kind of see what we're looking at. So I need to cut 3 cards. Honestly, it might be sacrifice. It might be sacrifice. Sacrifice. One more card. We can't cut these because these are like ways to buy turns after you combo with the Balustrade Spy. I'm not really sure if I want to go down on Ashiok. Let's just cut sacrifice. Because Ashiok is fairly important in milling out our cards. Okay, this is a pretty good hand as well. So we're looking at turn to Grief, potentially. Turn to Grief here. Oof, that sucks. So they're gonna take our Balustrade Spy or Dark Ritual. Could be a Grief as well. Oh, you don't want to surgical that. No, no, no. Okay, we take away the Spell Pierce. Are we about to live the dream? Are we about to live the dream here? No! No, that's okay, that's okay. Because we teched it. Almost gave me a heart attack. Almost gave me a heart attack. Okay, we're gonna put an upkeep stop. For the Haunted Dead. Ooh. That is pretty unlucky that we drew the World Spine Worm there, but that is pretty funny. So they can't even crack the polluted delta, so... Like, it was so unlucky that we drew the World Spine Worm. Like, what's up with that? So unlucky, man. Yeah, so the turn comes in, before we draw a card, we're gonna Haunted Dead, discard the World Spine Worm. That's going to shuffle it back on top of the deck, and we're gonna draw it. So that's the idea with the Haunted Dead. But that's, yeah, that was pretty unlucky that we drew it. Ooh. That's such an unfortunate mulligan. Yeah. I mean, gotta keep it. Yeah, this hand isn't very good either. Land is probably the best card we can draw here. So now we're just looking for Balustrade Spy. Potentially get there. Reanimate's also pretty good. They have 2 Flare of Denial. Let's see if we can force out a Flare of Denial. Nice. Super nice. I'm happy. So we're gonna reanimate here. Darksteel Citadel. Opponent's playing some kind of an artifact deck, it seems. Ooh. Ooh. Nasty. I really like their deck. Oh man, okay, so this is a sorcery, right? And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, just like that, the meme continues. The meme continues. It would be a shame if they can get some blockers though, but we're gonna have 2 tries of attacking because of the Haunted Dead. Yeah, the 2 goals were actually exiled. So They have 3 blockers. Okay, baubles. Do we want some baubles for their Flare of Denials? I mean, the thing is, opponent's playing Emery, which means they're playing Emery plus Tamio for the affinity. Which means they're also playing Flame of Lenore because these two are wizards. Emery and Tamio. So maybe bringing artifacts isn't that great. I can see myself bringing Leyline. Maybe. Actually, Bauble could be good. But then again, we also already have Ashiok for that. I don't know. I think we actually don't sideboard. Yeah, I think we actually don't sideboard here. Okay, we got a Balustrade Spy. This hand isn't particularly amazing, I gotta say. They kept the entire hand. I think it's a mulligan. So we got 4 lands. We probably want to keep the Malakir's Rebirth after Demonic Tutoring for a Grief. So we Demonic Tutor for a Grief, and the following turn we Grief, Malakir's Rebirth, Dark Ritual, Balustrade Spy. Can we even do that? I think we're one short. We're 1 mana short of being able to do that. Unless we get another untapped land on turn 3 for the Malakir's Rebirth. My opponent just... What happened? Did they like DC? Okay, Vexing Bauble kind of hot at the moment. That's pretty good. Well, do they have a Flare of Denial? We'll see. The thing is, even if they have a Flare of Denial, I can just Demonic Tutor for Reanimate next turn, so I think we still go for it. Take action, take action, take action. Okay. We can get the Grief out. We can, like, scam the Grief out, but... My hand is kinda... Because technically... This, they're all dead cards. So we got 3 dead cards here. But... I think it might be okay. Okay, so we're dealing with this kind of deck. I think we take away Show and Tell and Dig Through Time. And I think we're just gonna try to aggro them down. Yeah, we're gonna try to aggro them down, hopefully speaking. Whoa, they play Dark Ritual. So they don't play Counter Spell. Good to know. So if I can draw an untapped land, we can win by casting the Creeping Chill, because this bypasses Hexproof. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Reanimate. We're one off, huh? We are one off. So we can sacrifice this to potentially draw into a sacrifice. Didn't get there. Unfortunate. If they get an Aatroxodon, we have a chance of winning. I think we won, right? Aatroxa can't block the Grief. And they didn't get a Fatal Push. And this is an island, so I think we won the game. Okay, we were actually gonna win anyways. Very nice. Yeah, so that's how you win fairly. You know, quote unquote fair, but not really. We won Vexing Bauble. I think I'm gonna go down on 2 sacrifice, copy of an Ashiok. This Vexing Bauble is only there to, you know, when they show and tell, we can buy additional turn to win the game. Because we do need to attack the following turn, right? And the last card is... yeah, I think it's Ashiok. But Ashok's so good against their deck too. You know what? I'm gonna take out Sacrifice. Sacrifice is good like game 1, but the card doesn't have that many targets outside of Grief, so probably the worst card in the deck. Well, this hand is no good. If I can get Ashok out on turn 1, maybe. Right? Maybe. This hand is also kind of bad. I'm just gonna see if I can get to my combo then. Since we mulliganed a lot already. Feels bad. Definitely not ideal. I'm gonna play this tapped because turn 2 is usually their tutor turn. So if they tutor, I'll Thoughtseize, but we'll see. Oh, wow. Maybe. I mean, we can still lose if they have Show and Tell in hand, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Honestly, I think this is a safer play because opponent 100% has Veil of Summer at the moment. The way they're like playing out land and passing. It happened turn 1, it happened turn 2, so I'm guessing they have Veil of Summer, so let's hope that we win next turn. And they don't have a Veil of Summer. Let's cross fingers. Let's cross our fingers here. If it's an Aatrox, ooh. Yeah, if it was just Aatrox, we would have definitely won, but yeah. I think this game is over. I wonder if I turn 1 Thoughtseize, the game would have been different. Let us do that again. Okay. Grief? I'm gonna Grief first and then Ashok. This is a fantastic hand. I could take out double Brainstorm? No. That doesn't make sense. Maybe just take out double Omniscience then? Veil of Summer is also kind of meh for me because That means they can play around Vexing Bauble. Maybe just double Omniscience. Wait. They have... I think I'm just gonna play Ashiok. They have double fetch lands.
Right. Your final terror is upon you.
So what we're trying to do is... Nice. Very nice. Ashiok for the win! Alright, play some games with this deck today. I didn't want to play too many games because I do see the flaw with this deck. And I'm kind of scared of tanking my rating, honestly. Funny enough, like, I played this fully knowing that I was gonna lose probably, like, most of my games. But I actually won all the games I played today. We went 4-0 with the deck, which was, kind of surprising. The last game I didn't show because opponent left immediately after the combo. So yeah, this deck is inspired by Spellet's deck. The main deck is basically the same, except I have a copy of a Haunted Dead, and instead of a Progenitus, I have a copy of a Worldspine Worm because I didn't want to craft the Progenitus. This is basically the same as the Worldspine Worm, I believe. If this card would be put into the graveyard from anywhere, reveal this card and shuffle it into its owner's deck. So I do believe it reads the same. If the Worldspine Worm is put into the graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's deck. So yeah, these two cards, essentially the same thing. So if you already have this card, you don't really have to craft this card, vice versa. But yeah, the idea is that we have a Haunted Dead, right? So if you were to draw into this card, then you'd be screwed, right? So on the upkeep, you can Haunted Dead, discard this card, and you would have additional turn for you to attack with your creatures. I'm not sure if there's actually another way, like an instant speed card, that lets you do that. Let's take a look. It needs to be a black card. Instant speed, discard your hand. But it needs to also have a flashback, right? It needs to also have a flashback, since you're going to be milling your entire deck. And it has to cost one mana, probably. Yeah, it doesn't look like there is one. So I do think the Haunted Dead is probably the best card. So in the first game, we drew into a Worldspine Worm just before we were about to combo with the Balustrade Spy, which was very unfortunate, but thankfully, my intuition was correct. If you do draw the worm, you're gonna lose the game, so I decided to put a copy of a Haunted Dead just in case. And funny enough, it actually came in handy. So it does definitely seem like you do want to play a copy of this. So we had this teched in, so we were able to still win the game despite drawing a Worldspine Worm. But yeah, the deck is a messy one. The deck is very all-in, but at the same time, we actually won a couple of games through just not even winning with the Balustrade Spy, right? We were able to win with just Grief, we were able to win with just Ashocks, things like that. So, despite this deck being on, you know, quote-unquote all-in deck, it can still win through just being able to scam your opponent with Grief. That's how powerful this card is, right? And the reason why it was banned in modern format, just because it led to a lot of non-games, but also, like, Sacrifice, like, pretty bad. Probably the worst card in the deck, I must say. Because the only card that you can really sacrifice is the Grief, right? So I found myself actually going down on the Sacrifice game 2 and 3. Especially because Ashok is such a good card. It's between an Ashok. Honestly, it's between an Ashok and a Sacrifice, but oh my god, like, Ashok is just such a good card, like, especially if you can get it out on turn 1. Everybody's playing fetch lands, and especially Show and Tell. I think they play more than 10 fetch lands, right? So Ashok is just really good. Even if they had fetch lands, they have 5 copies of tutor spells, so the Ashok also stops that. it's just a fantastic card versus a show and tell. So the only card that this deck can't really play is the Prize Amalgam. So if this card is ever in your hand, this is the first target you want to exile the Grief Evoke. But I do believe I did get very lucky today. So don't expect the same outcome if you do play this deck and then be like, what is this garbage deck? I have to mulligan for, Dark Ritual into Balustrade Spy, but, I can't get it. And all I have left are like Silver Ghouls, Prize Amalgams, Creeping Chill stuck in my hand. So don't blame me for that. I just played this deck for fun, fully knowing that I was gonna actually lose a bunch of games, but unfortunately, I won all the games. Other than that, like I said, the Balustrade Spy does win you the game if you can get it out, but you can still win through Ashok, Grief, Scam Plan, plus after you Grief, right? Don't just save Sacrifice and Dark Rituals, right? Just play your Silver Ghoul or Dark Ritual into Silver Ghoul and reanimate back the Grief, things like that. Like, just don't pass your turn doing nothing just because you're saving for the combo with the Balustrade Spy. I think that's a recipe to lose the game. So this way, at least, like, you have to take momentum after you scam your opponent, right? So take advantage of the momentum and then Dark Ritual into Silver Ghoul, even Haunted Dead, if you can get it out onto the battlefield. And if you have Ashok, that's even better, right? Dark Ritual into Ashok. Ashok can mill 4 cards per turn. So if you hit something like a Creeping Chill, that's going to get the Silver Ghoul out, which is going to also get the Prize Amalgam out. So that's going to be the plan here with this deck. And as for like Graveyard Hate, not much you can do. We're playing Mono Black, right? So if you're playing Mono Black, you just have to go fast as possible with Dark Ritual and Sacrifice. The combo happens way too fast, like turn 1, turn 2, for you to really worried about the Graveyard Hates too much. So you're gonna basically want to disregard any Graveyard Hates and go as fast as possible. The sideboard is a little bit fishy, I would say. I'm not sure about the Leyline of the Void because we already have Ashoks to begin with, because you can just go Dark Ritual into Ashok. So I'm not sure about the Leyline of the Void, but it's there for now because as you can see, this is a pretty combo deck that requires a lot of combo pieces. Like, you can't cut the Worm, you can't cut the Creeping Chills, you can't cut Prize Amalgam, you can't cut Silver Ghouls, you can't cut Hunted Dead. So you're kind of left with cards like Ashok, Grief, and Balustrade Spy, but these are like the fair game plan, right? Quote-unquote fair, by the way. Which kind of leaves like Sacrifice only, right? So I guess you can take out all the Sacrifice for Leyline of the Void, Sanctity, or Defense Grid, or Vexing Bubble. That's exactly what I did. So that's why you see a lot of like 4-ups in the deck, in the sideboard, because the deck combos fast, so you don't really have time to even interact with your opponent using the sideboard cards. So having things like 0-mana cards like Ley Lines are pretty nice for the deck. The Vexing Bubble may seem weird because we are trying to Grief as well, but against Show and Tell, let's say you combo on turn 2 and opponent went first, right? Then they're gonna be able to get to Show and Tell faster before we can actually kill them. Which means you would want 4 copies of Vexing Bubble so opponent can't play something like a Veil of Summer on that turn. So you would want to have a Vexing Bubble come down with the Show and Tell, so you can have additional turn to attack with your creatures, right? Because it's gonna take a singular turn to come back for you to attack, since they're gonna have a Summoning Sickness. So yeah, I mean, that was the deck. Little bit messy. A little bit messy. I would say I didn't expect to go 4-0 today, but yeah, I don't think the deck is good, but it's funny. So yeah, that's gonna be it for today's video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye bye.